There seems to be a never-ending story of controversy these days, does it not? And the latest controversy, if you wish to call it such, is the evidence that has come to light that the game Avowed apparently has neo-pronouns in it, in the character creator. Now, there's a lot to be said about this, actually, and a lot not to be said about this. And as usual, I'm going to find myself somewhere in the middle ultimately. I'm going to find myself in a position that doesn't satisfy either of the very polarized sides when it comes to the so-called culture war. So I originally made a video saying that there's no evidence that Avowed is woke. This is actually evidence, as it were. This is some evidence that there's modern politics in the game. So let me say at the outset that I categorically dislike the injection of modern politics into games. I think it's a bad idea. I've explained this multiple times. It's just not good. It creates division. People start hating each other. It's not good. It's best to keep fictional settings fictional. So, do I love this addition in the game? Do I even like it? No. I think it is a bad idea, and I wish Obsidian had not done it. That said, there's a lot more to be talked about here. Now, it is true that this is a change. In both Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2, the characters were unambiguously female and male. And so something's happened. If I had to guess, this has come from Microsoft. In the last few years, there's obviously been a change of, you could say, cultural pace, and a lot of the publishers have created new mandates. So if I had to guess, Microsoft mandated the introduction of this. However, the theory that's going around the internet, which I think is not necessarily a good one, is that the reason why the character creator was not shown off was exclusively because of these neo-pronouns. Now that's possibly the case, but we just don't know. There's no evidence to support that is the reason. There could be actual lore reasons for why the character creator was not shown. We just don't know. Could it be because of the neo-pronouns? Yes. Could it also be because of lore reasons? Yes. We just don't know. But the problem here is we know basically next to nothing about the rest of the game. And so the inclusion of neo-pronouns doesn't necessarily mean that the game qualitatively will be bad across the board or even bad in its totality. I don't like them. I wish they weren't there. And it could be an indication of something bad, i.e. politicizing the game in the wrong way and not focusing on good storytelling and good game mechanics. It's possible. It could be that this is the only instance of that in the game. We just don't know. Now, I understand why people are talking about this. A lot of people are up in an uproar about this. But from my observation, the people that are most upset about this are not people that were going to play Avowed in the first place. They have no background in Pillars, which is fine. And I think if you don't want to play a game for any reason, be it pronouns or something else, that's fine. Every reason not to play a game is a valid reason. For example, I don't have a particular interest in the Kingdom Come series. Why? Well, it's not because it's a bad game. Obviously, it's a very good game, and I respect the quality that Warhorse has injected into these games. But I need a little bit of supernatural. I need a bit of magic, fantasy. It doesn't need to be a lot, but it needs to be something. And frankly speaking, Kingdom Come Deliverance 1 and 2 are games that are historical RPGs, and as a consequence, there's absolutely no magic involved in the game, which is fine. It just means that it's not a game for me. Anything can be a deal breaker for the individual player. That's fine. If you see the neo-pronouns and you don't like them, and you don't want to play the entire game because of that, that is literally, absolutely, perfectly fine. Now, for me, I have to be honest, as I explained in a previous video, that is not enough. For me, a game needs to be absolutely infused with this stuff, hitting you over the head, and the game needs to be about, basically, modern politics. The most recent showing of this, of course, was Dragon Age The Veilguard, which I've talked about a lot. I'm kind of sick to death about talking about this game, but yeah, it's a perfect instance of being hit over the head by modern politics in a way that very few people want to experience or have a desire for. You have the Mirror of Transformation, you might remember that scene. You have many miniature dialogues, you have the entire character of Tosh, etc., etc. That game is bad on multiple fronts. Terrible writing, boring combat, and yes, the modern politics made it even worse. But again, the question to be asked here is, will Avowed be that type of game? And I still see little evidence for that. Again, you see more complex dialogue, you see backgrounds being influential, you see stats, you see many things that indicate that this game will not be about modern politics. Could I be wrong about this? Obviously. We've only seen a snippet. But historically, it hasn't been Obsidian's style to only make games about modern politics and ideology. It's just not their thing. They tend to do it more subtly, in as much as they do it at all, and sometimes they just don't do it at all, period. Now, I also want to point something else out here. A lot of people like Baldur's Gate 3, right? But let me talk about the elephant in the room. I like Baldur's Gate 3 a lot. I made a top 5 CRPG video about the best games of the last 10 years, and Baldur's Gate 3 got number 5, which is a very high honor indeed. But Baldur's Gate 3 is an extremely woke game. The idea that it's not is just copium. As you can see on the screen, you have the option of being non-binary. They don't use male or female, they talk about body types. Indeed, the game is so woke that it inspired a bunch of people to create a mod called No Alphabets. And what this mod does is very simply removes every single element that could be remotely called progressive. Everything you can imagine under progressive ideology is removed by this mod. That's the intention, because these people who made the mod hate that. There you go. You can see what it does on the screen. It basically unwokeifies most of the woke elements in Baldur's Gate 3 using different technologies such as AI, modding tools, lighting effects, etc., etc. So you can see that Aelin, the wife or partner of Isabel, who's presented in the official game as female, has been made a male because that was a lesbian romance. You can see that the cross-dresser / transgender individual that is at the circus in Baldur's Gate, the city proper, has been turned into an eccentric-looking woman, and there are a lot of these features in this mod. Now, I don't use this mod personally because it doesn't bother me that much, but if you think about it from the hyper-sexualized individuals to gay gnomes referring to each other as husband, to, as I pointed out originally, the non-binary options in character creation as well as body type as opposed to male or female, Baldur's Gate basically fits the definition of woke, the definition of a lot of people that exclusively talk about this type of content in games. That's their mainstay, that's the red meat that fuels their channel. Baldur's Gate fits the bill 100%. The question is, why was Baldur's Gate not talked about in the same way? Well, there are a few reasons here. The reality is that everything at the end of the day is a little bit about PR. We have to acknowledge that. And even if you really hate all the quote-unquote woke elements in Baldur's Gate 3, talking about the game in a negative light would not earn you a lot of kudos. Why? Because the game is wildly popular. It's the most popular CRPG possibly ever. It sold more than 15 million copies. People almost universally praise it. Not everyone, mind you, such as the people that created the No Alphabets mod, as an example, but most people think it's a very good to excellent game. So even if your channel is about pointing out wokeness in games, you're not going to do this because it looks bad for you to be hypercritical of a game that is in most respects excellent qualitatively, but has woke elements. And that is why the usual suspects never talked about Baldur's Gate 3 in this light. It just would have been a bad PR move on their part, because the quality is so good that they would have looked like fools. The other aspect to this is that when the quality is not good or unknown, then everything becomes fair game. We already had hints of this, inklings if you will, that Dragon Age The Veilguard was not going to be a good game. When the game came out, it turned out to be a very poor game indeed. And so all bets were off, and you could attack the game from every angle. You even had and have mainstream large-scale content creators who never talk about politics or wokeness in games being hypercritical of the game because it's across the board just bad, with very few exceptions. The hair is pretty decent, the environments look pretty good, and it's relatively polished. That's about it. Where does Avowed sit in all of this in terms of, is it going to be good or bad? We just don't know. And that's the reason why it can come under fire right now. Because you see the neo-pronouns, and we don't know qualitatively if it's going to be good, so it becomes fair game for people who primarily talk about wokeness in games. You have to be honest here. We just don't know yet. Will Avowed be as good as Baldur's Gate 3? Almost certainly not. Will Avowed be as bad as Dragon Age The Veilguard? I'm not hesitant to say, almost certainly not. There are already options that show that it's not the case in the game, in the preview. Very, very good evidence to suggest it is not going to be as bad as Dragon Age The Veilguard. Ultimately, it's up to you whether or not the neo-pronouns are completely disqualifying of the game. For me, they're not. Part of the reason is I'm a Pillars of Eternity veteran, I love the world of Eora, and I'm very interested in the lore, and I want to see how the story continues. How does the story of the gods shake out? What is going on in the living lands? A new continent in Eora? That's fascinating to me. But if you are on the fence, or you have no background in Eora, or Pillars of Eternity, and you just see the pronouns, and that's an instant non-purchase for you, well, fair enough. Like I said, any reason a person cites can be a reason to not buy or play a game. It's all up to you at the end of the day. You have the power of your own purse strings, you can make that decision. Again, I don't like neo-pronouns in games. It's beyond ridiculous. But so far, so good. I'm thinking, this isn't a great sign, but Microsoft probably forced Obsidian to do this, and the game probably will still be a good game. I have some degree of trust in Obsidian in a way that I do not in a studio like BioWare. But, as always, thank you for tuning in, and if you like my content, and you like my takes, you can leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. It's much appreciated, as it really helps out the channel, and I'll check you out next time. Take care.